I am sure most people would have thought him an ugly man. Yet there was so much unconscious pride in his sport, so much ease in his demeanour, such a look of complete indifference to his own external appearance, so haughty a reliance on the power of other qualities, intrinsic or adventitious, to atone for the lack of mere personal attractiveness, that, in looking at him, one inevitably shared the indifference, and even in a blind, imperfect sense, put faith in the confidence.
I am disposed to be gregarious and communicative tonight, he repeated, and that is why I sent for you. The fire and the chandelier were not sufficient company for me, nor would Pilate have been, for none who those can talk. Adele is a degree better, but still far below the mark. Mrs. Fairfax ditto. You, I am persuaded, can suit me if you will. You puzzled me the first evening I invited you down here. I have almost forgotten you since. Other ideas have driven yours from my head. But tonight I am resolved to be at ease, to dismiss what importunes, and recall what pleases. It would please me now to draw you out, to learn more of you, therefore speak. Instead of speaking, I smiled, and not a very complacent or submissive smile either. Speak, he urged. What about, sir? Whatever you like. I leave both the choice of subject and the manner of treating it entirely to yourself. Accordingly, I sat and said nothing. If he expects me to talk for the mere sake of talking and showing off, he will find he has addressed himself to the wrong person, I thought. You are dumb, Messiah. I was dumb still. He bent his head a little towards me, and with a single hasty glance seemed to dive into my eyes. Stubborn, he said, and annoyed. Ah, it is consistent. I put my request in an absurd, almost insolent form. Messiah, I beg your pardon. The fact is, once for all, I don't wish to treat you like an inferior. That is, I claim only such superiority as must result from 20 years' difference in age and a century's advance in experience. This is legitimate, je tiens, as Adele would say, and it is by virtue of this superiority and this alone that I desire you to have the goodness to talk to me a little now, and divert my thoughts, which are galled with dwelling on one point, cankering as a rusty nail.
He had deigned an explanation, almost an apology. I did not feel insensible to his condescension, and would not seem so. I'm willing to amuse you if I can, sir, quite willing, but I cannot introduce a topic because how do I know what will interest you? Ask me questions, and I will do my best to answer them.
Then, in the first place, do you agree with me that I have a right to be a little masterful, abrupt, perhaps exciting sometimes, on the grounds I stated, namely that I am old enough to be your father, and that I have battled through a varied experience with many men of many nations, and roamed over half the globe, while you have lived quietly with one set of people in one house?
Do as you please, sir.
That is no answer, or rather, it is a very irritating, because a very evasive one. Reply clearly.
I don't think, sir, you have a right to command me, merely because you are older than I, or because you have seen more of the world than I have. Your claim to superiority depends on the use you have made of your time and experience.
Promptly spoken, but I won't allow that, seeing that it would never suit my case, as I have made an indifferent, not to say a bad, use of both advantages. Leaving superiority out of the question, then, you must still agree to receive my orders now and then, without being piqued or hurt by the tone or command. Will you?
I smiled. I thought to myself, Mr. Rochester is peculiar. He seems to forget that he pays me £30 per annum for receiving his orders.
The smile is very well,
said he, catching instantly the passing expression.
But speak too.
I was thinking, sir, that very few masters would trouble themselves to inquire whether or not their paid subordinates were piqued and hurt by their orders.
Paid subordinates? What? You're my paid subordinate, are you? Oh, yes. I'd forgotten the salary. Well then, on that mercenary ground, will you agree to let me hector a little?
No, sir, not on that ground, but on the ground that you did forget it, and that you care whether or not a dependent is comfortable in his dependency. I agree heartily.
And you will consent to dispense with a great many conventional forms and phrases, without thinking that the omission arises from insolence?
I am sure, sir, I should never mistake informality for insolence. One I rather like, the other nothing freeborn would submit to, even for a salary.
Humbug. Most things freeborn will submit to anything for a salary. Therefore, keep to yourself and don't venture on generalities of which you are intensely ignorant. However, I mentally shake hands with you for your answer, despite its inaccuracy, and as much for the manner in which it was said as for the substance of the speech. The manner was frank and sincere. One does not often see such a manner. No, on the contrary, affectation or coldness or stupid coarse-minded misapprehension of one's meaning are the usual rewards of candour. Not 3 in 3,000 raw schoolgirl governesses would have answered me as you have just done. But I don't mean to flatter you. If you are cast in a different mould to the majority, it is no merit of yours. Nature did it. And then, after all, I go too fast in my conclusions. For what I yet know, you may be no better than the rest. You may have intolerable defects to counterbalance your few good points.
And so may you, I thought. My eye met his as the idea crossed my mind. He seemed to read the glance, answering as if its import had been spoken as well as imagined.
Yes, you are right, said he. I have plenty of faults of my own, I know it, and I don't wish to palliate them, I assure you. God wot I need not to be too severe about others. I have a past existence, a series of deeds, a colour of life to contemplate within my own breast, which might well call my sneers and censures from my neighbours to myself. I started, or rather was thrust on to a wrong tack at the age of 21, and have never recovered the right course since. But I might have been very different. I might have been as good as you, wiser, almost as stainless. I envy you your peace of mind, your clean conscience, your unpolluted memory. Little girl, a memory without blot or contamination must be an exquisite treasure, an inexhaustible source of pure refreshment, is it not?
How was your memory when you were 18, sir?
All right, then. Limpid, salubrious, no gush of bilge water turned into fetid puddle. I was your equal at 18, quite your equal. Nature meant me to be, on the whole, a good man, Messiah. One of the better end. And you see I am not so. You would say you don't see it, at least I flatter myself I read as much in your eye. Then take my word for it. I'm not a villain. You are not to suppose that, not to attribute to me any such bad eminence, but owing, I verily believe, rather to circumstances than to my natural bent. I am a tried commonplace sinner, hackneyed in all the poor petty dissipations with which the rich and worthless try to put on life.
Do you wonder that I avow this to you?
Know that in the course of your future life you will often find yourself elected the involuntary confidant of your acquaintances' secrets. People will instinctively find out, as I have done, that it is not your forte to tell of yourself, but to listen while others talk of themselves. They will feel, too, that you listen with no malevolent scorn of their indiscretion, but with a kind of innate sympathy, not the less comforting and encouraging, because it is very unobtrusive in its manifestations.
How do you know? How can you guess all of this, sir?
I know it well, therefore I proceed almost as freely as if I were writing my thoughts in a diary.
You would say I should have been superior to circumstances. So I should. But you see I was not. When fate wronged me, I had not the wisdom to remain cool. I turned desperate, then I degenerated. Now, when any vicious simpleton excites my disgust by his paltry ribaldry, I cannot flatter myself that I am better than he. I am forced to confess that he and I are on a level. I wish I had stood firm, God knows I do. Dread remorse when you are tempted to err, Miss Eyre. Remorse is the poison of life. Repentance is said to be its cure, sir. It is not its cure. Reformation may be its cure, and I could reform. I have strength yet for that, if... But where is the use of thinking of it, hampered, burdened, cursed as I am? Besides, since happiness is irrevocably denied me, I have a right to get pleasures out of life, and I will get it, cost what it may. Then you will degenerate still more, sir. Possibly, yet why should I, if I can get sweet, fresh pleasure? And I may get it as sweet and fresh as the wild honey that bee gathers on the moor. It will sting, it will taste bitter, sir. How do you know? You never tried it. How very serious, how very solemn you look. And you are as ignorant of the matter as this camel had. You had no right to preach to me, you neophyte, that have not passed the porch of life and are absolutely unacquainted with its mystery. I only reminded you of your own words, sir. You said Eyre brought remorse, and you pronounce remorse the poison of existence. And who talks of error now? I scarcely think the notion that flitted across my brain was an error. I believe it was an inspiration rather than a temptation. It was very genial, very soothing, I know that. Here it comes again. It is no devil, I assure you, or if it be, it has put on the robes of an angel of light. I think I must admit so fair a guest when it asks entrance to my heart. Distrust it, sir. It is not a true angel. Once more, how do you know? By what instinct do you pretend to distinguish between a fallen seraph of the abyss and a messenger from the eternal throne, between a guide and a seducer? I judged by your countenance, sir, which was troubled, when you said the suggestion had returned upon you. I feel sure it will work you more misery if you listen to it. Not at all. It bears the most gracious message in the world. For the rest, you are not my conscience keeper, so don't make yourself uneasy. Here, come in, bonny wanderer. He said this as if he spoke to a vision, viewless to any eye but his own. Then, folding his arms, which he had half extended on his chest, he seemed to enclose in their embrace the invisible being.